Welcome to Campfire Tales. For this week's tale, I've chosen to retell a story with a little bite as I'm feeling a little spicy with everything going on in the world. Like last week, this week's tale is ultimately about taking responsibility for our actions and confronting our shadows. The Little Black Dog is a featured tale from American author Alvin Schwartz's popular book series, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Though the story really does have a lot of mythic roots, as we'll explore in a little bit. So, without further ado, here is my version of The Little Black Dog. This is the story of a man named Billy. Billy, who thought he could do whatever he pleased. Billy, who did not believe in ghosts. Not at first, anyway. Billy was not a good man. He was the kind of man who didn't like people, didn't like animals. Really, he didn't like much of anything except getting his own way. And if something annoyed him, he got rid of it. Simple as that. Now, his neighbor had a dog, a little black dog. It was small and harmless, nothing to be afraid of. It wasn't even really a bother, just a friendly little thing that sometimes wandered too close to Billy's property, sniffing around the fence posts, leaving little paw prints in the dirt. But Billy didn't like it. He didn't like the way it looked at him, didn't like the way it wagged its tail when he walked past. He didn't like anything about this dog. So one evening, when the dog trotted into Billy's yard, he knew it was a mistake. Billy picked up his rifle, took aim, and shot the dog. The neighbor was heartbroken, but Billy, he just laughed. "It's just a dog," he said. "Ain't no one gonna miss it." But Billy was wrong. Something, or rather, someone, missed it very, very much. It started a few nights later. Billy was walking home from the tavern when he felt it. A chill, a prickle on the back of his neck, like someone was watching him. And then, there it was, a black shape in the distance, sitting perfectly still at the edge of the road. He squinted. It was a dog, a small black dog. His breath hitched, but he shook it off. It couldn't be the same dog, of course. That one was dead. He had killed it and buried it himself. Billy muttered under his breath and kept walking. But the next night, it was there again. And this time, it was bigger. Still silent, still watching. Billy cursed and kicked a rock toward it, but the dog didn't flinch. It didn't move, it didn't blink. It just sat there, waiting. And each night after that, it kept coming back, bigger and bigger and bigger. At first, it was no larger than a small terrier. Then it was the size of a hound. Then it was as big as a wolf. By the end of the week, it stood as tall as Billy's chest. It never barked, never growled, never even lunged at him. It just watched. And when Billy tried to tell someone, they only shrugged. "I don't see no dog," they said, because the dog wasn't there for them. It was only there for Billy. One night, after Billy locked his doors and bolted the windows, he couldn't sleep. The room felt too quiet, too still. And then he heard it. A sound so low, so deep, it seemed to rumble through the walls. A growl. Billy sat up, heart hammering. He reached for his rifle. He wasn't sure why. It hadn't done much good the last time. The growl grew louder, and then the floorboards creaked. Slowly, deliberately, as if something was moving toward his bed. Billy's breath came in sharp, panicked gasps. His hands trembled. And then he saw them. The eyes. Twin pits of burning red ember in the darkness, staring, waiting, and the growl became a snarl. And before Billy could even scream, the black dog lunged. Next morning, folks in town found Billy's door wide open. Inside, they found Billy's body, stone cold, lying stiff on the floor. His face was twisted in terror, his mouth locked in a silent scream. But here's the strangest part: there wasn't a single scratch on him. No blood, no wounds. It was as if the life had simply been taken from him. And the dog, well, the dog was never seen again. Some say it disappeared forever. Some say it was only waiting for the next cruel soul to cross its path. But me, I say if you ever find yourself walking alone at night and you feel a shiver crawl up your spine, if you glance over your shoulder and see something in the shadows, something black and waiting, something with eyes like burning embers, don't run, don't speak, and for the love of whatever you believe in, don't look too long, because you might just find out who it's waiting for. This is the story of the little black dog. All right, let's get into the symbology of the little black dog. So let's start with the dog. And in many mythic and psychological frameworks, dogs symbolize loyalty, protection, companionship, and trust. And that's the thing, right? This little black dog in the beginning is a small, harmless, trusting little creature. He expects kindness from the world. It's not threatening, and its only fault is existing in Billy's presence. And Billy's act of killing it is a rejection of innocence and love, of violent dismissal of something pure. This actually echoes Jung's concept of the lost or rejected self. The dog actually represents this tender feeling, intuitive part of the psyche that Billy cannot tolerate within himself. And by killing the dog, and thus killing this part of his psyche, it kills the part of himself that he doesn't want to confront. But what we repress always returns. And that comes in as symbolically as the black dog as shadow. And the shadow, as we know, represents repressed, denied, or unintegrated aspects of ourselves. So again, when Billy kills the dog, it's symbolic of an unconscious act of repression and an attempt to destroy a part of himself that he doesn't want to acknowledge. But as we know, the dog does not stay dead. Instead, it returns and it grows larger every time Billy refuses to face it. And again, this comes back to Jung's idea that the shadow does not actually disappear when ignored. In fact, it grows more powerful. And the black dog is forcing Billy to confront his own cruelty. Yet, he still refuses it. He refuses to acknowledge his guilt. And so, the dog growing larger and larger is symbolic of the escalating guilt and repression that Billy has. And the black dog's growth actually amplifies all of the repressed emotions that Billy has. It also is symbolic of a psychopomp, which is a soul guide, and he's leading Billy toward an unavoidable reckoning with his unconscious mind. When we get to the part of the story where the eyes are glowing embers or hollow voids, this is symbolic of the concept of the archetypal unconscious gaze. Because in mythology and dreams, the burning or glowing eyes often symbolize illumination and truth. But for Billy, this truth is honestly so unbearable. He, again, refuses to look directly at what the eyes reveal or what they reveal within himself. And this is actually what we call individuation and the confrontation with the self. It's a necessary process to reach individuation. But Billy again, refuses to face them. So then the dog evolves into a symbol of justice, the shadow's justice, because in Jungian psychology, when someone refuses individuation, the shadow will enact that balance by force. And in folklore, black dogs often appear as guides or judges. And Billy is being judged, not by this external force, but by his own shadow. And it's important to remember that the shadow does not seek revenge, it seeks balance. And that's why the dog doesn't actually need to maul Billy to death or tear him to pieces. Really, he simply dies of his own fear because the weight of his repressed guilt is too much to bear. Now, the dog's disappearance is an interesting part of this. We actually saw this back in Domingo's Cat, where after the cat helps his master attain all of his riches, he leaves. That's common in mythology and folklore. The dog vanishes because it was never truly a separate entity, but an externalized force of Billy's psyche. And now that Billy is dead, his reason for being, the black dog, only existed as long as its purpose remained unfulfilled. So one of the takeaways that we can take away from this is that if we integrate our shadow, it doesn't need to haunt us. But if we ignore, repress, or reject, it will manifest destructively and demand recognition. So this was some of the symbology for the little black dog. I hope that you enjoyed the story, and I'd love to hear what you think of it and what other symbology or mythological connections you make. All right, I'll see you next time.